Good afternoon, students. Welcome to your session for learner support in mathematics, and the subject code is BES-MAT41. I am your tutor, Miss Loide Ampolo, and that is my contact number. In case you need help, you are free to call me. Let's move on. Welcome to another session of learning support in mathematics. This presentation covers very few contents and a guide is a preparation for August examination. So we are just going to go through some of the few things that might or might not be part of the examination. The introduction. Please note that I cannot give attention to the whole content, so should you have any question, please contact me for help, as I said earlier on. And this is not the examination scope, and you should go through your study guide and study all the units, because the examination will cover all the units in your study guide. So then go through all the units. They are all important, and what I'm going to present here is not the scope for the examination, so then be aware of that. Just to give a very few subject overview, this subject, learning support in mathematics, it's a subject that gives theories and approaches to successfully teach and go about the subject. It's just like a guide on how to teach mathematics. It will equip us with skills needed to support upper primary learners and build strong foundations and further preparing them for secondary education. So then remember that you are dealing with grade 4 to 7 learners. So then this one is just to support how we support the learners and prepare them for secondary education. This subject also analyzes approaches which support special needed learning. Now, if you can remember, our education is moving into inclusive education. So then we come across learners with severe special needs, and so this subject will also give you some guides on how to deal with special learners in our classes. It also discussed issues relating to mathematics teaching and the learning environment, how to teach mathematics, and how can we prepare our classrooms to be conducive classroom for learning mathematics. It also discussed issues relating to assessment. How do we assess learners? How can we assess those gifted learners? How can we assess those learners with special needs as well? And different types of assessment are also covered in this book. Okay, let's start with one part of our study guide. In our study guide, which is perceptions. What is it? What is perceptions all about? This is the help given to the learners to enhance the development of their senses. We have 5 senses: touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing. So then perception is a help given to the learners. How can we enhance the development of these senses? Now, it can be developed through color. We can make use of colors, different types of colors, big diagrams if the person or if the learner cannot see well from a distance, or even from either short-sighted or long-sighted. So then how will we use diagrams to help them develop their senses? Bringing materials to the learners to touch, to develop the sense of touching. How will perhaps a fur feel, and then they can be used that one to measure some distances, order numbers from ascending and descending, order things, descending and ascending, and compare tall, short, big, small, and so on. So then you also give children a variety of experiences that help them form one more concepts. So then we should move from just teaching in the class to different, help learners to experience some other things as well, so that you can develop some of the concepts. We have another important part in our book which talk about the key features of emotional support. When we talk about the emotions now, how can we support our learners? What are the key features now? We must have a passion for teaching. You must learn you must love your subject. And when you teach the subject, you have to teach with more confidence. You must be confident enough. All you want to do is teach your subject, and you want your learners to learn very well. So then you must develop this passion for teaching. And you should support them by showing real care for the learner's progress. If the learner did not do well in a test, why can't you give that learner a second chance? Perhaps, why can't you give that learner remedial lesson so that the learner can improve? So then you should care for our learners' progress. How they are doing is very, very much important. Warmth. You should be supportive. Don't feel for the learner. Make sure that they develop that trust in you, that if I found something which is difficult, I'm free and my teacher is approachable. I can rely on my teacher for help. And we should also show respect between you and the learners, as well as help learners to show respect between themselves. And accept all of them. Remember, we are moving into inclusive education. There are learners with severe special needs. So then we have to accept them all. They are all equal, and they are all have the right to proper education. Do not feel like, no, this learner cannot do well, or he cannot pass, or what. Try by all means to accept as they are and try to move them into another level so that they can learn better. Empathy for learners' anxieties and circumstances. So then empathy, you have to feel for the learners, how they feel about the subject. If the learner did not perform very well, how can you develop that is not like you cannot do it forever? How can you show empathy to the learner's anxiety? I know most of our learners are having so many negativities towards the subject. So then we have to try by all means to develop a positive thought, a positive attitude to our learners towards the subject. And we should also show emotional support by listening without interrupting the learners. If the learner is asking a question, listen without interfering. If another learner is asking a question, try by all means to make sure that all other learners are listening. And we should also show emotional support by praising and encouraging the learners. If the learner did well in the test, show that you did very well. Do not just give the marks and keep quiet. Motivate the learner to keep on. You can even give them stars in their book. They like them very much. And keep on encouraging them. And we should move away from these other words like poor, writing on the papers like you are poor, fail. you should try to be positive. Use neutral words like I believe you can do better, believe you can in yourself that you can achieve more. This was very good, but next time aim high again, and so other things. And sometimes you can also encourage learners by perhaps giving them sweets, but do not make empty promises. If you say, if you pass this test very well, I'll give you sweets tomorrow. Of course, that one is a type of encouragement. And if the learner really did best, give those sweets. Do not make empty promises. They are very, very much damaging. Another important thing is the causes of difficulties in learning mathematics. One is the problem solving. Learners find choosing the appropriate strategy to solve a problem difficult. Are we going to add? Are we going to subtract? Are we going to multiply? Or we are going to divide? What am I going to do here? That choosing a strategy sometimes is very, very difficult, especially when it comes to word problems. Sometimes learners do not understand what the statement is all about. And then they need to know the basic facts in mathematics and how to use those facts to solve problems. There are some of the key words that learners must know. What is a sum? If the question asks you to find the sum, the total, the difference, the quotient, how much more, how much less, those keywords, we must know them, and we should teach them to our learners as well. Another problem is the language. The abstract language of mathematics is sometimes difficult to use. If I just come into the class and say prime factorization, today we are going to do prime factorization. What is it I'm talking about? Sometimes what we teach, we should try to neutralize the language, simplify what you are saying to the learners, and so on, so that the language will be much more comfortable for learners to use. Because in the examination, if the question said solve, evaluate, but the learner doesn't know what evaluation means, what is expected from that learner, she won't or he won't be able to do it. So then sometimes the language, we should try to make it much more comfortable to the learners. Another difficulty, and it's a very serious one, is the developmental nature of mathematics. Mathematics builds on previous knowledge. Poor background in mathematics will hinder advancement in the subject. So here, learners are doing the senior primaries from grade 4, and then it covers 5, 6, and grade 7. Anywhere a gap is created between there, a learner will not be able to move on comfortably. And we should encourage learners, like mathematics is a subject that you should learn for life. In grade 12, you might be asked some of the things that you have learned in grade 4. And so the learners should not just learn for the purpose of moving on to the next grade. They should learn mathematics for life. It's a subject that builds on as they move toward, with the grades as well. Let's look at the stage in solving word problems. The first thing is to understand the problem. The learner has to understand the problem and what it means. We should learn or teach our learners to start or to develop that method of underlining the keywords when they are reading. Like, you should not wait for you to read the whole statement and come back again. The moment you start reading the statement, start underlining the main points and put something on paper already, so that when you move on to with the question, with the instruction, at least you know what you are expected to do there already. And that will help them to understand the problem, to understand the question much better and what they are expected from them. Another stage is translation now, where the learner should translate the problem into a mathematical language. You know, the word problem are in words, so the learners are expected now to put something in numbers. How are they going to do that? We have to help them with that. And that stage involves choosing the right operation now. Are we going to add? Are we going to subtract? Are we going to divide? Or are we going to multiply? Depending on how the problem is. And so try to help them to make a very correct translation. And the next stage is calculation, where the learners need to use that chosen operation to work out their answers now. And they have to calculate using the correct steps. And the last one is the correct form. A learner should give the answer in the correct form using the correct unit. This is a very important thing. If the question asks how many learners, the answer should be like 20 learners. How many cars? The answer should be maybe 15 cars, not just 15 and full stop. They should learn to answer the question now in the correct form. Go back and answer the question. What is the question ask you to work out? Is it the number of what is that you are calculating now? And that word should be part of the answer. And we should also teach our learners to make sense of our answers. You might find learners having answers like 2.5 cars. You don't know what it means. 2.5 cars now. Is it 2 cars and a half car, or what is it mean? So then some of the questions requires learners to have a very correct form. Make sense of your answers. Is it making sense? 2.5 cars, is it making sense? So then you have to teach our learners how to do that. Let's move on. Another important thing is the factors to consider when planning a lesson. When we are planning our lessons, what are the factors involved? Pupils' previous knowledge, learners' previous knowledge. What should learners know before learning a new topic? That is very important. You have to consider that. Materials. What and how much material should be used for the lesson? If I'm teaching volume, what must I bring in the class? Is it the box, perhaps? Is it the bottles? Or what is that I have to bring in the class to make that concept much more easier to get? And class ability and experience. Is the class mixed abilities? Will less able learners need different activities? You find that some of our classes are much more mixed. There is a very big gap between the highest learner and the lowest learner. And so when we are planning our lesson, we have to put that in mind. You should have activities lined up already for those learners who are fast learners, and the activities lined up already for the slow one, so that when you give these easier things, the fast learner cannot get bored, and the other one will not find the subject much more difficult. So then we need a balance between those things when we are planning our lessons. Difficulties learning and teaching the topic. The teacher must prepare and know the topic very well. Sometimes if you do not prepare, You'll be surprised by what you are. Sometimes you won't even understand yourself. What is that you are teaching? You don't know. Sometimes, especially when it comes to the long division, you end up making unnecessary mistakes. So then we have to be very, very careful on that. If you know maybe that this part I'm not so much comfortable with, take time and study that topic very well before you go and teach the learners, so that all the questions that learners will be having, you'll be ready to answer them, and you will be ready to answer them correct. Let's move on. A textbook is a teaching and learning resource. Most of our learners are having textbooks. It might not be one-on-one, but a textbook is a very much powerful teaching and learning resource. It provides examples, problems, exercises for the class, and homework, and they are graded even according to the level of difficulty, with the first one easier. So then sometimes when you are teaching, learners should also have their textbooks so that they can see what is in their textbooks, what activities are there, and what examples are. Sometimes there are nice pictures that they can relate to, or they can help them understand better. So then let's make use of our textbooks most of the time in our classes. And those examples, problems, exercises, questions in the textbooks, they are well arranged from the easiest to the difficult one. So then when the learners are practicing, tell them maybe you can do the first two, and take 2 questions in the middle, and take 2 in the last. So then, because the first one are always easier, the middle one they are moderate, and the last one they are quite challenging. So then we can teach our learners to do that. And it also outline or provide methods of teaching. But then each textbook uses its own teaching approach. We have different authors for the textbooks, and you find that some of the textbooks are having steps on how to do or go about the subject or the topic, how to teach the topic, and some textbooks are not having that. So then let's try to get different types of textbooks, and so that you can compare which one is much better to use, and which one is easier for the learners to understand. A textbook also have explanations. Teachers decide whether the explanation in the textbook is the best. As I said earlier on, look for the best one. Which one is much easier and which one is much more clear. The steps are much clearer, and the explanation are given. The step 1 is you have to do this. Step 2 you have to do this. They are always given there. And the main idea of the course, the definitions, properties, notations, conventions required by the course should be found in the textbook. So then at the beginning of the book, there are always those thinking verbs, words, a list of words, verbs. What do you do when you are factorizing? What do you do when you simplify, evaluate, solve, and so on? And at the back of the book, there are also these words are also defined. There's a glossary defining those words. So then you should also be able to go through there and help learners be aware of those key concepts. Pupils, learners who are absent or need further information or guideline can use the textbook. Some of the textbooks are really learner friendly. Even if the learner was not in the class, you will be able to study the text in that textbook and pass. So then it's a powerful thing. It's a very nice thing for learners to use. And revision materials. Some of the textbooks contain revision exercises. In most textbooks, at the end of every chapter, there's a revision, maybe examination questions or revision exercises. So then we should encourage our learners to use those as a learning tool. Let them use the textbook, and then let's take advantage of what is in the textbook and use it in to further their knowledge and skills and how to solve mathematical problems. That comes to the end. Lastly, the whole syllabus will be covered in the question paper. All the units are equally important. So then you should study and go through all the units in your study guide. Revise the learning outcomes and know what is expected from you. Revise and revise the learning outcomes at the beginning of your book or at the beginning of each and every chapter, and to see what is that you should know. And the examination for our subject is out of 100, and you need a minimum of 60%. 60% is just 60 over 100, and I believe you can score that. Read and understand the question carefully before you answer. Look at those thinking words, thinking verbs. What is, if you say, the question say discuss, what must you do? Explain, what must you do? Outline, what must you do? List or mention, draw, or those type of questions. You should go through there at the beginning of your study unit, your study book, and they are given there. And look at the marks allocated to determine the length of your answer. You don't need to write the whole page for a question that's worth 2, 3, or 5 marks. So then look at the marks allocated to determine the length of your answer and where you should shorten your answer. Sometimes you don't need to go much into detail. So then, as I said, you must be aware of those thinking verbs that will direct you on what you have to do. Thank you, my learners. Thank you, my students, for being here. I wish you all the best in your examination.